Hello everyone out there, this is Bob with Thrive Wellness. Today's discussion is on the standard American diet and its impact on our health and chronic disease risk. And the presentation I initially did on site several weeks back featured a little bit of a trivia throwdown. So we're going to weave a few elements of trivia into this discussion online as well. So a few things we will touch on. What exactly is the standard American diet? How have our eating habits changed over time? What are some of the health implications of consuming a dietary pattern along the lines of the standard American diet? What is the typical nutrient density of the standard American diet, or lack thereof is probably a better way to say that. How sad is your diet? So we've got a little bit of an assessment you can take to see how healthy your current eating habits might be. And then we'll touch on moving forward with a healthier approach and framework to diet. So what exactly is the standard American diet? According to the National Institutes of Health, the standard American diet, or Western pattern diet, is a modern dietary pattern characterized by high intakes of red meat, processed meats, packaged foods, butter, fried foods, high-fat dairy products, eggs, refined grains, potatoes, and sugary beverages. So everything a growing boy needs. This is a look at the standard American diet from a more visual representation. So basically, 63% of the standard American diet is processed foods. That encompasses snack foods, sweets, added fats from oil, sugars, refined grains. So a lot of those typical junk foods and processed grains you might find in the grocery store, for instance. About 25% is animal foods, and unfortunately, probably not the best choices within that category either. A lot of red meats and processed meats, especially like bacon and sausage, and lunch meats. And then you've got plant-based foods. Only half of that 12% you see there is actual unrefined, whole, plant-based food. So again, that's where we get the bulk of the nutrients in our diet. And that's the most problematic part of the standard American diet, is that it is really lacking on all of those healthy whole plant foods, again, where we're getting the bulk of our nutrients. If we can look at this graphic here and really take that 63% chunk there, that should really pretty closely represent what we should be taking in whole, unrefined plant-based foods, and only a minimal amount of those processed, refined kind of foods in the diet. So now that we know what the standard American diet is, how in the heck did we get here? So there have been a lot of changes in our eating habits over time. Some really significant societal changes that really brought about many of the shifts that we've noticed in our diet, especially going from a single earning family to a lot of mostly actually dual income families, where time is significantly important. So that really created a significant rise in demand for convenience in foods, not only with fast foods at restaurants, but also those convenience prepackaged foods that increased significantly over a span from the 1950s on up through current time. So this massive change in how we produce food created, of course, a surplus of food for consumption, but unfortunately the focus was more on quantity rather than quality in those foods. And we also, because of that surplus, we also saw a slow and dramatic increase in portion sizes over time. And we'll cover that a little bit later in our discussion. But ultimately, we arrived at a diet that unfortunately overfeeds us while at the same time undernourishing us. and we'll speak a little bit further on that phenomenon and how that impacts our chronic disease risk. The standard American diet and chronic disease. So, scores of epidemiological studies now indicate consumption of a standard American diet is very, very positively correlated with significant increases in everything from obesity to heart disease, cancers, especially of the colon, diabetes, and a whole host of inflammatory conditions like arthritis and Alzheimer's disease, for instance. It's estimated by 2020, 81 million Americans will have multiple chronic conditions. Currently, about 50% of the population has at least one chronic condition. And based on all the research and all these epidemiological studies, diet is by far the most profound input with respect to our risk for chronic disease. The standard American diet and chronic disease. So this next slide here is from the Centers for Disease Control. Eliminating just 3 lifestyle risk factors: poor diet or standard American diet type eating patterns, lack of exercise or physical activity, and smoking. If we could eliminate just those 3 lifestyle risk factors, we could prevent 80% of heart disease, 80% of type 2 diabetes, and 40% of cancers. So the verdict is definitely out there regarding the choices we make and how that impacts our health and our ability to avoid chronic disease as we age. All right, so that brings us to the trivia portion of the presentation. So I've got a series of about 4 quiz questions here. So anyone out there that is able to respond with the 4 correct answers is going to get an extra 25 points. All right, so the first quiz question: how many grams of fiber does the average American consume daily eating the typical standard American diet? So fiber is one of those macronutrients that is vitally important with respect to our health. It can help us maintain our weight. It helps with gastrointestinal health to keep our GI tract clean and functioning. It reduces risk factors for cancer, for heart disease, for diabetes. It can help us lower our cholesterol over time. It can help us manage our blood sugar. It also helps to keep us fuller longer. So again, fiber is vitally important to our health. And on the standard American diet, we just don't get enough of it. So the answer to this first quiz question is less than 14 grams of fiber. So keep in mind the average adult male is recommended to have about 40 grams, and the average adult female about 25 grams. So this is really kind of a low-end number even to shoot for. So we're way under where we need to be, at least by half. And the problem, again, is that the standard American diet is just void of those high-fiber, whole plant-based foods. So any of you out there that opted to take the 5-a-day challenge, you guys are automatically doing better with your fiber intake, as fruits and veggies tend to be some of the best foods to consume if you are looking to increase your fiber intake. So good on you guys. Next quiz question: how many milligrams of sodium are found daily in the standard American diet? Again, sodium is one of those nutrients that is commonly linked to especially hypertension or high blood pressure, and risk for heart disease and stroke, especially if we're getting too much of that sodium, pushing our blood pressure up. Also concerns with kidneys. So again, the standard American diet tends to be significantly loaded with sodium. And the bulk of that sodium content coming from restaurant foods and those refined foods in our diet that tend to come out of a box, a bag, or a can. Certainly think of any of the pre-packaged meals, any of the snack type foods. A lot of those foods have so much sodium added as not only a preservative, but a flavor enhancer. All right, so the answer to that quiz question, how many milligrams of sodium are found daily in the standard American diet? 3,400 milligrams. Remember, it's recommended to keep sodium content in the diet to somewhere between 1,500 and 2,400 milligrams. So we are easily double, if not triple in some instances, the sodium content. And again, that's a significant risk for heart disease, for high blood pressure, for stroke, for issues with the kidneys. And you couple that with the lack of intake of those fruits and vegetables that provide things like potassium and magnesium, which act to balance out the blood pressure, keeping it lower. So between those two things, too much sodium, not enough potassium and magnesium, that often is a key precursor to blood pressure issues. All right, so let's talk portion sizes then and now. So at some point in the 50s and 60s, we began eating convenience foods, poor nutrient density, lots of calories. But not only did we switch the types of food we were eating, we also drastically increased portion sizes over time. So we'll take a look at how some of those portion sizes have changed. Standard American diet portion sizes, then and now. So the then represents the 50s and 60s, and the now is really within the last 10 years, so pretty modern times that we're looking at. So portion sizes for a single serving of French fries in the 50s and 60s started out to be about 2.4 ounces, or around 210 calories. Now you've basically tripled that to well over 600 calories, 6.9 ounces. Take a chocolate chip cookie, for instance. About 1.5 inches was the diameter, at about 55 calories as a grocery store size serving. Now, again, you've more than doubled it in about 275 calories. A muffin, same story there, about 1.5 ounces and around 210 calories, now 4 ounces and 500 calories. How about a few other common food items? A turkey sandwich, for instance, in the 1960s was probably around 4 to 6 inches, maybe 320 calories. Now it's much more commonplace to see 8, 10, even 12 inches as more the norm. And again, well over double the calories. Spaghetti dinner used to be about 500 calories, maybe a cup, and now is double in size as kind of the standard restaurant size portion or store-bought portion. Coffee used to be, maybe if there was a sweetener in it, maybe it was a teaspoon or two of sugar. Now the serving size for coffee is twice as much, and of course is loaded with cream and sugar and other flavorings as the norm. All right, so one last portion size here. The bagel used to be about 3 inches and now 6 inches. Again, doubling in calorie content. A cheeseburger maybe used to be about 2 ounces, not quite a quarter pound. Now, oftentimes more commonplace, about a half pound for a burger, and again, almost double the calories. Soda used to be an 8-ounce bottle back in the 50s. Slowly grew to a 12-ounce, then a 16-ounce, then a 20-ounce, and now you've got your mega sizes in convenience stores. So drastic changes in portion sizes, and also as a society, how we view portions and accept them.